What's up guys, my name is Ace, and Season 2 Reloaded came with a brand new aftermarket part for the Holger 26 LMG, and this is the JAK Burnout Kit. So today we're going to be taking a deep look at this, breaking down all of the stats, and then toward the end I'm going to be sharing two different class setups that I really like using with this JAK Burnout Kit. And diving right in, let's first have a look at the damage profile, since it completely changes the damages on the Holger 26. And the first thing you'll notice here is we deal the same amount of damage anywhere in the body or even the head. It's the same damage. And this is going to vary wildly from a 4-shot kill up close all the way up to a 10-shot kill in the minimum damage range. It's also worth noting here, oftentimes when you drop off from one damage range to another, it's not just taking you one extra shot to kill, it's going to take you 2 extra shots to kill, which is something you don't see very often in this game. After that though, let's have a look at our rate of fire, which is extremely fast at 1,000 rounds per minute. And what this means is with a 4-shot kill, we're killing in 180 milliseconds, which is an amazing time to kill in this game. There are very few guns in this game that will compete with a 180 millisecond time to kill, unless of course they're a 1-shot kill weapon. However, the big thing to keep in mind with this is since we are increasing the number of shots to kill so drastically as we increase our ranges, our time to kill at longer ranges is actually very, very slow at 540 milliseconds. Just for reference, the average time to kill for Modern Warfare 3 LMGs in their minimum damage range is 376 milliseconds, so this is significantly slower there, and therefore you've got a ridiculously powerful gun up close, but it drops off in its effectiveness quite drastically as you stretch the ranges out. And speaking of ranges, let's have a look at it right here, and as we can see, that maximum damage range is tiny. It's 5.1 meters, and therefore, while that 180 millisecond time to kill seems insane and way too powerful, it's literally only 5 meters. Most shotguns have a better range than that. And as a result, more often than not, you're going to end up in that 300 millisecond time to kill range, which is still a competitive time to kill in this game. You'll still be holding your own just fine, and you're still getting a better time to kill potential than the base Holger 26. But I would say anything beyond 31.5 meters, that's when the effectiveness of this gun starts to fall off a cliff. And I would definitely try to make sure that you always keep yourself within that 0 to 31.5 meters while using this kit. Additionally, I wanted to point out we actually get a nice bullet velocity boost here. With this kit, our bullet velocity is 948 meters per second, which is very solid in this game. But like I said, we should be keeping ourselves reasonably close quarters with this kit anyway, so it doesn't make a huge difference. I just wanted to point out we do get that boost. And after that, let's now get into recoil, and this is where things start to get really interesting with this kit. With the first 20 or so rounds that you fire, we actually have very reasonable recoil. In fact, I'd actually call this very good recoil considering the 1,000 round per minute fire rate. However, the big trick with this is after that 20 rounds or so of continuous firing, the recoil just starts to go insane on you and it'll just kick straight up to the sky. So typically you don't want to be just holding that trigger down for long periods of time with this gun. You just want to fire enough to get your kill or a couple kills if you got 2 guys in front of you, and then let it recenter before you fire again. Now on that note, I was curious to see if there's like a long cooldown period here. Like if you fire a bunch of rounds, take a very brief pause, and then you start firing again, does it reset that recoil so the first 20 rounds you fire is going to be quite accurate? Or is it going to be inaccurate until you pause firing for like a few seconds? So with this test here, I just fired a bunch of rounds off into the distance, then I tried to really quickly recenter on my recoil wall, and I fired. And as you can see here, it appears even with just that short pause in between, we're still getting pretty decent recoil on the wall, and therefore it appears you only need to take small pauses in between firing in order to get that recoil reset at least to a reasonable level. So that's good to know, but I just wanted to circle back quickly to my initial recoil test here. And one more thing I wanted to point out with the recoil is there is quite a big jump after the first shot that you fire. And that is just something you'll have to be aware of when using this gun. You might want to aim a little bit lower on the target or just make sure you're using attachments that help with vertical recoil. Now, as for the next thing I wanted to test, this is actually coming from the initial Season 2 blog post. The description for this kit in that blog post from a while back says that you can overheat and expand the barrel as you continue to fire, which will introduce spread. And spread in Call of Duty terms means when you fire a shot, that bullet isn't necessarily going to go directly where you're aiming. There will be some randomness coded in there. And I haven't really seen a mention of that since the blog post. It's not in the in-game description or anything. So I was curious to see if maybe that's like a hidden stat that they just failed to mention in the description. So I put this to the test as well, and as you can see here, I fired a bunch to get that barrel heated up, and then I just fired a bunch of individual rounds, and it turns out those rounds went directly where I was aiming every single time, even though that barrel was still red hot. And as a result, I believe they ended up backtracking on this, and we don't actually have spread, we just have that significantly increased recoil after holding down that trigger for a while. And that finally covers it for the recoil section of this. The next thing I wanted to point out is all of our handling and mobility stats are exactly the same as the base Holger 26, so nothing really interesting to report in those areas. And this leads me to the next thing I wanted to test with this gun, and this is, how is it at destroying streaks? Because my immediate thought is an LMG with 1,000 rounds per minute, that's gotta be insane at taking out streaks. However, based on my testing with incendiary rounds, which by the way are the best ammunition for taking out streaks, it turns out we're dealing very little damage per shot to these streaks, likely due to our massive range drop-off that we have. And as a result, well, of course you can still take streaks out. You can do that with any gun in the game. This is by no means a standout LMG in this area, and it isn't even remotely close to the best LMG for taking out these streaks, which is the MWIII Mark IX. So there we go, just another thing I wanted to point out, since I'm sure many of you guys had that exact same thought as me. And with that, that pretty much covers it for the important stats of the JAK Burnout Kit. Now let's get into a couple excellent attachment combinations I made with this. And the first one I wanted to share for you guys is my balanced build with this kit. So with this one, we're using the XRK Bowbreaker grip in our underbarrel section. We're using that JAK glassless optic for a little bit of firing aim stability, the Ascent Lord stock, and then finally the MWIII 20 grip combined with the JAK Burnout Kit. And with this one, you can see we've actually got a very accurate gun on our hands, at least for those first 20 or so rounds that you fire. Again, after 20 rounds, it starts to get crazy on you, but you should be able to get your kill or even 2 kills within those first 20 rounds more often than not. Additionally, our aim down sight speed isn't that bad for an LMG at 322 milliseconds. And our sprint out time, again, is pretty reasonable for an LMG at 225 milliseconds. Now, on top of that, we're also very nicely improving our flinch resistance due to that MWIII 20 rear grip. And honestly, this is not a bad setup at all if you just want to use this like a normal gun. As long as you aren't firing more than 20 rounds at once, and as long as you aren't stretching your ranges out too far to the point where your time to kill is just going to suck, then this is actually a pretty solid setup. In saying that though, that's not actually my preferred build with the JAK Burnout Kit. Instead, I prefer using this in tac stance. So here's my second build. This is my tac stance build. With this, we're using the Bruin Bastion angled grip, the CT2000 rear grip, the Holger 556 factory stock, and the 1 milliwatt laser box. And I want to point out with that one, technically we can get a slightly better tac stance spread with a different laser, but the 1 milliwatt laser is not a visible laser beam, and it's still pretty close to what you would get with the visible lasers. So I am willing to sacrifice that little bit of tac stance spread in order to ensure that I'm not announcing my presence before the enemy can even see me. And with this one, we've got quite a solid tac stance spread at just 1.7 degrees. Our aim down sight speed is 325 milliseconds, but since we're in tac stance, that doesn't matter all that much anyway. Our sprint out time is actually very nicely improved at 184 milliseconds. And with that insane fire rate that we've got on this gun, that just makes this a very solid choice in tac stance, and you can actually do extremely well with this. Another thing that I really like about using this in tac stance is it allows you to be hyper aggressive and actually close that distance to the point where you can often be in that 4-shot kill range for a 180 millisecond time to kill. That's something that you can't do nearly as easily with the previous build, since our handling and mobility stats are going to be a bit weak. And with that, that's finally going to wrap it up for the full breakdown of the JAK Burnout Kit for the Holger 26. As for my thoughts on this particular kit, I love it. I think it's an excellent addition to the game. This is the type of aftermarket part I love to see, where it drastically changes the gun and creates something that you don't really see with any other guns in the game. So it provides a totally different way to approach the game, and it's mainly just for fun. It's got a good amount of power if you treat it right, but it also has plenty of limitations, and as a result, I just feel like it's a nice, fun addition to the game. Now, of course, these are just my thoughts, and I'd love to hear what you guys think about the JAK Burnout Kit in those comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.